What is black magic? I think this is a very personal experience for every magician. So today we're going to be talking to two very well versed practitioners in black magic, myself and my good friend Eileen. We're both energy healers and shamans, and we work deeply with this in different capacities. So let's go right into it. So, what's black magic? I think you should go first on your opinion on your experience. I think there's the definition of black magic that we can like discuss from a textbook term, right? And
Yeah.
then there's like the individual experience that has a very pure definition of it. So, I think we should do our own like
Okay.
vibes.
Okay. So for me, black magic is anything that has not been explored, understood, and that it does create tension when we come across it. So it's really broad. I know like my personal definition is quite broad because I personally feel that I'm the most powerful when I don't have this fixed definition on black magic. I try to be
Hmm.
as generous and broad as I can be. So typically for me is anything that I feel that is misunderstood, that is demonized, that is perceived to be extremely negative and bad, to me that has a vibration of black magic. So I would look at that kind of stuff, whether it's within the person, whether they literally feel like they're being attacked by other curses and hexes and stuff like that. I look at it.
Hmm.
That's what's coming through for me. What's yours?
Okay. For me, honestly, the there's a word that comes up and it's just like yourself or like
Mm,
myself, right? Like
yeah.
that's what black magic to me really is because through my experience, black magic has shown me how it's so integral to your anatomy. Like you're doing it by default and you're not even aware of it. And the world is structured heavily off of like black magic principles. And when you learn kind of like, okay, this is the system that I'm working in, you can then have more dexterity to move elements of reality around. You know what I mean?
Yes.
For me, it's always been trying to discover power. Like I've always been really attracted to
Mm,
power. I love power at different degrees, and I've explored power in ways that kind of have forced me to let go of that idea of power. So like at times I wanted to be like this super entrepreneur, and then once you actually get that level of power, you're like, shit, like this is a lot that you got to deal with. Like with more power comes more responsibility, and then it makes you adjust and be like, is this actually what I want? So it shows you almost like you're lying to yourself. Like you thought this thing that you wanted is it was gonna like be the ultimate fulfillment of dharma. You have it, and now you're not happy. What is
hmm
dharma if it's not fulfilling you now? You know what I mean? So it's shown me, okay, well, anything I eventually want is only because I'm not clear with myself.
hmm
And that's what black magic I think has really taught me the most is like the more clear I am with myself about what I'm actually creating, I don't even have to manifest because it's all happening around me anyway. Like by default, the only thing that's going to be there is what makes me invincible. And
hmm
invincibility is like me being in my highest vibration in my personal universe that will eventually trickle into other universes, you know?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. It's creating, I love power, by the way, too. I love, in the beginning, I was seeking to understand what like the conventional understanding of power was, which is to manipulate reality or to gain what I want, to be able to go after the goals that I set forth to do and attain it, and then have enough awareness or power or courage within myself to fight against, I think this is important, to fight against anything that comes in my way. That originally was my perception. And then after a while, I realized as I evolved in my understanding, practicing black magic and even understanding black magic, it's like it gets to this place of still teaching me about power, but from a different perspective. That there's so much power as well in the surrender and the yielding and sharing of power,
Mm-hmm.
because people
Yeah.
don't think about that, that you actually become more powerful when you share, when you affect change at a higher
Mhm.
level. Hmm.
Mhm. 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 Yes. Yes. I think that's those are really good definitions, personal definitions on black magic. But just generally like the if we were to describe it, black magic is the perceived usage of negative energy or like dark energies to manipulate reality. And a lot of times people consider black magic just like horror movie type stuff, which is like, you kill somebody or like, you do something like that. But really, black magic is also used in healing, it's used in manifestation, it's used in like subconscious reprogramming, like stuff like that. It's actually in everything. And shadow work, if you're somebody who's gotten into shadow work is like intro level to actual like black magic, and it's barely scratching the surface, to be honest, because you're still in the light trying to perceive something that is darker, it's deeper, it's beyond the light itself. It's the shadow that is being cast by the light. But then
Hmm.
eventually there comes a point where the shadow stops existing and it just becomes the void. It'll become the darkness, it'll become like a sense of emptiness and then becomes the void. And then it keeps growing into like these amorphous concepts. Like yeah, that's one of the best ways to understand black magic at a definition. Can you do really shitty things? Yes. Can you do really awesome things? Yes. What black magic will actually do is it'll force you to face yourself to see who you really are. And the reason why some people end up doing really shitty things when they start getting into black magic is because that's who they naturally were underneath it all. And they
Hmm.
didn't have the ability to exercise self-control, which then forces them to implode their lives and all this other stuff, because black magic is power. Black magic will give you the ability to do some really insane stuff. But then if you have ego while you're doing these processes, the ego will get inflated and then eventually it's going to come back and it's going to like it's like a rubber band, like
Hmm.
from what you created from, it has to return back to. And
Hmm.
then that's where people have the whiplash and their lives implode.
Yeah, that's a great point. Black magic is inflates your ego because of the acceleration of power you're going to gain from the practice and understanding of it. So if you don't know how to let your ego die in certain situations and then allow this like death and rebirth transformation to happen, then you would have a lot of whiplash. And that's why a lot of people get into it. Some people get into it and they create a lot of chaos for themselves. And then they can't help it. Eventually needing to take a break, get out of it, or get some help from someone who can
Mhm.
help them. But yeah, that death and rebirth process
Yeah.
is critical.
Well, the whole black magic process, honestly, is like a culture of itself, is what like really comes to my mind. Like you have to learn a new way of being because you're being more real with yourself, which means
Hmm.
if you're being more real with yourself, you have to be more real with the structure of the cosmos, meaning we live in a third dimension. The third dimension is polarized. It has positive and negative. It's dual. It has gender. We see it in everything. So it's not like you can escape it. And there's moments where you see the unity of all of it and it becomes like a third thing. But, when you're working with black magic, it's about no longer having a prejudice. Like one of the things it's done a lot for me is like reform the idea of God. Like, and it has not corrupted the idea of in a weird way, black magic has brought me closer to God. And most
Yeah.
people don't like most people don't
I
realize
have
that until they dive in.
I personally witnessed this progression in you, so I can attest to that. Yes. Before, like, yeah, for a while you're like, not talking about God. And now you're like, wait a minute. Hmm.
Because like you end up realizing that the concept that humanity has used to define God is what you actually have resistance to because it's not the truth of what God is. And that's like what really opened my mind. Like I started learning the fullness of God, which is also the negative or the perceived
Hmm.
negative, because it's not even negative, it just is. It's a
Hmm.
certain density or chemistry of energies that exists on the within God on just a different spectrum of God. You know what I mean? It's almost like when you have a friend that you hang out with every so often, you know so much about them. But then a best friend, you know like some of their dark shit, you know what I mean? And like
Mm-hmm.
that's what black magic has really taught me is like the darker aspect of God that God himself embraces because it's manifested. It wouldn't be manifested if God wasn't participating. Everything is God.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So like I get really angry just to like top it off, when I see these creators that come out and they're like, "Oh, no one can do black magic." If no one can do black magic, why the hell is it a concept that every culture across all humanity for like thousands of years, we all have a consensus that it's possible to do? Like it's just whether or not it's taught openly because obviously you don't want people to have access to shit like that. You know what I mean? That's why
Mm-mm.
it's the occult arts. But it exists because it can manifest. And there's so many people around the world for thousands of years that have been attesting to that.
Yes, and it's the people who insist on denying black magic, they're only limiting their own power of expansion. That's what I've seen. Um, I used to be in the Christian world for 5 years, and they were very conflicted in the sense that, they would talk about God and mentions the devil, but then when I asked them about it, they're like, no, the devil doesn't exist. What do you mean? Okay, so if you accept God, but yet you don't accept, like what you said earlier, that the Bible mentions the devil as God's creation, part of it, but you don't accept that it actually is what it is. So why? Why? That's why there's that phrase like the devil's greatest trick is to convince the world that he doesn't exist
Mm-hmm.
so that he
Mm-hmm.
can operate in the shadows all the time, the boogeyman to come out and scare you, and you have no control in those states where you're being freaked out by the potential that black magic might be real, right? That's one of the reasons why I got curious with black magic because I'm like, no, 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 this can't be it. It doesn't feel right. I know there's evil in the world. You can't tell me that there's no evil in the world. And I do feel and know that there's also a higher power like light and God and deities and whatever you want to believe in, right? The cosmos. So the people who comes to me, doesn't matter from which perspective, and says there's only light or there's only one God or there's only one way, to me is just yet another way to deny their own inner darkness.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with the concept that there's a oneness. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, for sure.
Yes.
But that oneness is in everything. Like, and I mean, you and I were having a conversation earlier today, which, we were like, we should record this on the
I
podcast, so
know.
it's coming back.
Good, it's coming back.
It's coming back. It wants to be manifested. Um, so basically, I was having these deep meditations the other day where, I realized that I should almost like hire myself in the astral to be my own like hypnotist therapist and um like allow like a quantum shift from like a higher perspective, right? Like I'm going to like a cosmic therapist who's me, who knows everything about me and can help me get out of my own situation. And in that conversation, it was talking to me about like in every manifestation, like right now, the manifestation that you want is already in front of your face. It's already here. Like it's not that you're trying to work your way towards the manifestation, is that there's something off in the equation that's not allowing the manifestation to present itself the way you want to see it. So when you look at it from that perspective, like you literally can't give yourself anything because you already have it. So what resistance is there other than a calculation error? When you change it from, oh, I got to jump hoops and like walls and all this other stuff to a calculation shift, okay, that's like just going back and reviewing your work really quick and then adjusting a few key elements that changes the whole algorithm to manifest what you want to witness in the holographic reality. And what's been really powerful about that is like it brings me back to this like I it's not that I don't have the things that I want. It's just I am not clear enough on what it is that I want. And that's why it hasn't manifested.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's clarity.
Mm.
Clarity is
Mm-hmm.
invincibility.
Okay, okay. Oneness. To me, if you get to a place where you understand not necessarily oneness, but I like to think of it now as totality, like how you like to talk about, totality. It is understanding literally you exist in this reality where there's always darkness and light. And no matter who you are and where you're at, there's always going to be quote unquote resistance. Because that's the thing that annoys us the most, right? When we're going after shit. What the fuck? Why can't I motivate myself? Why can't I get up and just like make a plan? Why can't I go work out when I say I want to lose 10 pounds? It's the resistance that get us to slow down, to like give up on ourselves, to whatever, get into a very chaotic state. And black magic to me is like understanding how to deal with the resistance that comes up so that you can have totality, so that you can understand how to behave in a certain way that allows more manifestation and more flow to come in while witnessing the totality of where you're at. Because it doesn't matter where you're at right now, you're going to have positive and negative stuff happening even if you're at the
Mm-hmm.
highest high, right? Maybe you're going to be anxious because you're about to go on the biggest talk show or something. And you're like, oh my God, I'm just going to fail this. That's resistance. That's negativity. That's something you're going to have to deal with. So it's kind of, yeah, to me, it's like understanding in the secret, the occult knowledge. A lot of it is in how do you deal with your own darkness, your own resistance, so that
Yeah,
you can be open.
I love that you bring that up because that's actually something that I've learned a lot of. Like, that's one of the things that's reformed me with. You're gonna be the bad guy in some reality eventually because you are an infinite being. Therefore, you cannot deny like you denying your own like quote unquote shittiness is not helping you become more authentic with a higher vibration that is. Like the more authentic and the less resistance you have with yourself, then you have no choice but to be higher vibrational. And then a lot of people think oh, that was one of the reasons I think that it really got into black magic too, because had noticed that there were 5D, 60, 70 shitty people. And it was hit. I'm like, how the fuck is this happening? Like, how did they hit this peak and then got corrupted? Or is it that like there's another criteria that's required here for ascension to happen and it has nothing to do with whether or not you're a good or bad person? And when I boil
Mhm.
it down to get to 5D, you just need to be hella authentic with yourself and live from that authenticity, which of course is going to give you fear. But then at the same time, like if that is the challenge. That's why you're doing black magic to become invincible. Are you truly invincible if you still have fear? And if most
Mhm.
importantly, fearful of yourself. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
then of course you're gonna have reasons to be afraid of the fucking world and shit because you don't even trust yourself fundamentally.
Yeah, no, and it's like authenticity, you take it to the highest level, then it is embodying the totality of who you are cosmically. So
Yes.
when anyone decides to do that shit, I'm sorry, you're gonna have people who hate you and you're gonna have people who love you. When
Mm-hmm.
you're at that peak of your power, doesn't fucking matter anymore. Like, it doesn't fucking matter.
Mm-hmm.
You look at anyone who is successful, they've got haters. There's no way they can avoid it because they're so visible, because they're so influential or powerful, whatever it is, or rich, whatever, however you want to perceive them to have so much power. And they have to be okay with that. Otherwise, they will just fall and not be able to maintain that vibration and continue
Yeah.
to go up.
People who react to you meet you at a certain vibration within their reality. So like if you're like an epiphany and then they react like and they come into contact with you and they react negatively, then the negative impact, their reaction is the epiphany of being in your energetic field is what I've learned. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes,
so like
100.
it's not that people necessarily hate you or they're envious of
Mm-mm.
you or whatever. It's just they were in that vibration of envy when they came into contact with you. And then that triggered them to manifest like a negative comment or something else that's like that, that outwardly expresses its negativity. And it's really just starts changing the way you even look at how events unfold in manifestation because it's no longer about I don't know, like I guess I'm going on a tangent, but I think where I'm trying to get to is with social media, right? Like I've always
Mhm.
been somebody who has been quote unquote the nice guy for a really long time, which then later I learned nice means ignorant, and that's why I was having a lot of ignorant experiences. When I stopped calling myself the nice guy, I decided to be the real guy, like honest 100% about everything. And then that allowed me to then evolve. And the truth of the matter is that, like, no matter what you do, it's almost fulfilling to just not be a liar to yourself. So, like, for instance, I get people who send me negative comments on Instagram and I get into this thing where I'm not going to outwardly be mean to you, but I'm going to now agitate you to show you the flaw in your own thinking. So then I like to debate a lot. So when I end up
Mhm.
getting into these conversations with people who like are clearly not conscious enough of themselves to be aware of what's being said in a video or something like that, then I debate them until their logic collapses upon themselves again. Like they almost contradict they always contradict themselves actually. And then in that process, at first I used to be afraid and I used to be like, "Oh my God, what if I, have these debates with people online and it just ends up getting me canceled?" And then it was like, "You know what? No, because the honest to God is not to allow people who are spreading misinformation or have a limited form of thinking to feel justified in walking away that they're walking with the truth." Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like I'm not giving them a service or the world a service by letting them walk away with ignorance. So even if it means
Mhm.
that I have to trigger you so you can see your level of ignorance and show other people your level of ignorance, because I think that's the most important part of the equation is like other people can see those comments and that conversation and that debate. And then a lot of people will be like, oh, damn, Axel made a point. Like there is a flaw in this logic or whatever. And then
Mhm.
always when the person gets challenged and they realize full circle that their original standpoint has a bunch of fucking loopholes and like it just can't stand on solid ground, they all become the victim suddenly. I'm so glad that like you feel like you could take off all of your aggression on me. Like you're not the victim. You came in here with negativity. I neutralized it, and because you didn't fucking get the win, now you're a victim of the
Mm.
conversation that we're having. And then it happens that way a lot of times. Like there's this common misconception that like shamans all have to be, or shamans and healers all have to be like
Nice.
the nice guy. You know what I mean?
So
Like the
nice.
kind person. You can talk shit to me and I don't have to like hold my ground. Like, yeah, for people who are still on that journey, that's the fucking truth. That's what their life is. But people at like our level now, hell no. Like we gain
Mm-mm.
more power by shifting reality by directly confronting your consciousness. And there's different levels of confrontation and you pick and choose your battles. But it's like black magic has forced me to acknowledge I like to debate. I like to make them look stupid on the internet. I also really enjoy like the energy behind it because it forces me to really think clearly on what I'm going to say. Make sure that every word is applied correctly. Do not like have any punctuation mistakes. Do not have any like fucking grammatical errors of any form so that you are presented clearly without any loopholes in your conversation. And it's made me a stronger debater. It's made me somebody who can communicate more clearly when it comes to the sciences. And I think that's why people on the internet respect me when I jump, like when I throw things out there, even though they're like wild.
Mhm.
Because even sharing shit about black magic on Instagram and stuff like that, there's a lot of people who tell you like the regurgitated shit, like get herbs, do this, do that. It's all energetic work. Like if you really understand how consciousness works and your anatomy works, you can fucking hack black magic in a ton of infinite ways because we live in an infinite universe and that's the nature of God.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I love the way that you are talking about that you're practicing to not have any resistance even in intention. And then the way you're operating is really next level because I can't say that I would behave the same way if I was in your shoes because it's a difficult situation to be in, to be a content creator and have all these people come at you with their opinions and then having to refrain yourself from getting into every debate or battles.
Yeah, you pick and choose your battles, and then
Yeah,
you
you
can
pick
also
it.
see like where your energy can get applied. Like there's been so many times where I could chew out somebody and I feel it like, do you even deserve like this energy right now? Nah, I'm gonna fucking just do something else. You know what I mean? And it like I didn't have that level of control doing light magic for the longest time, being a like super angry person myself, and like I
Mm,
have fire. I like to get in fights
yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't do that with white magic. And that's I guess that's the next point that I really wanted to point out earlier was true dark magicians, coming back to what you said, like they work in the shadows. You
Yeah.
don't know that the puppeteer is there. They're puppeteering you though. And
Hmm.
then when you practice black magic, now you can see the puppeteer, and that's what usually like freaks people out at first, because it's
Yeah.
like, oh shit, like we're like in a false reality, and like even what I think about light magic is not even completely true, and blah 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 blah.
Definitely. It's basically the ones who understand themselves, their own darkness, the deepest, are able to have the most self-control and therefore power
Mm-hmm.
because they will flow and choose wisely based on what they understand to be kind of the most opportune moment within the tension. Because the people who are able to excel compared to others are the ones who are going against what the 90% of the population is not doing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, going against what they're sorry, going against what they're doing. So we're doing like the 10%. We're going after the 10% is what black magicians do, is what shamans do, is what we look at
Mm-hmm.
the loopholes, we look at what people are missing, the consciousness, the behaviors, reactions, and all of that. And it always comes back to yourselves in the end, because black magic will keep telling you, you're weak here, work on it. You're flawed in this perception, confronted. And if you don't confront it, sometimes when you're practicing black magic, they will throw it in your face. It's just
Mm-hmm.
create
Mm-hmm.
like they create a collapse or chaos in your reality. And that's why this is one of the reasons why, it's wise to have some sort of guidance traversing through this realm, some sort of a teacher, a guru who has more experience than yourself. Because yeah, that kind of stuff happens and it's not easy. That's why most people don't do it correctly.
Mm-hmm. But I think like I got really deep into black magic because I had mastered Antojai,
Hmm.
and mastered is a very loose word. You know what I mean?
But then
Like
you were trained as a shaman when you were younger, so.
right, right. But like at when I was younger, I didn't like, for instance, one of my divine powers by default is like death magic.
Mhm.
As a kid, we didn't call it necromancy. I just knew how to manipulate the dead realms and stuff like that easily.
Yeah.
So when I got older, that's when I was like, oh, I've always been able to just do necromancy. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
We didn't, when I was growing up, we didn't call it manifestation. It's just how shit worked. You know what I mean? Like everything's around you is alive. The plants are alive. The cosmos is alive. If you treat it with respect and you talk to it, it will respond. And then
Hmm.
I grew up developing a relationship with the cosmos, like quite literally. And then that's kind of how I like I've done black magic things. Like I've cursed people before I even knew
Hmm.
formal cursing. Like when I was 16, the first curse I ever laid was because like my dad was drinking. He was being super abusive. I wanted to get back at him, and I heard a voice like, "Hey, okay, grab this plant over here, pull it, like pull one of the leaves, like say this prayer, blow energy into it, do this, do that. And it gave me a whole instruction manual. I did it. And when it told me, okay, ready, three, two, one, blow through the leaf, I blew. And in that instant, he was pulling out like a liter of fucking vodka and
Mhm.
it slipped out of his hand. It was brand new and it shattered all over the floor. And it was like so instantaneous that I thought to myself now an adult that cursed him, but I was doing that out of self-defense because I knew
Mhm.
that if he kept drinking, the night was going to get worse. So like
Mhm.
is that particularly evil? And in that sense, like am I what was talking to me? Like you debatably you could say it was a demon, you could say it was God, it was a voice, and I feel like it was like like it was a spirit of the void itself.
Mhm.
It's like
Mhm.
giving me
Mhm.
instructions, like the Akashic records. This is what you have to do to get rid of this problem.
Yeah.
And as I've grown older, I've done like like not quantum hypnosis, but I've done like traditional hypnosis with people who understand like quantum physics and shit like that. Not to be confused with like DeLorean's Cannon's technique, but I've done these sessions where demons have come out of my consciousness and they have been linked to pivotal moments in my life. When like one of them was when my dad had broken his neck and I was 8 years old. Like in that moment, there was, because astrology, when you do cliffothic astrology, it shows you that there's a demon accompanied by every angel. They're always in the same place together, like positive and negative. The demon that was drowning my dad was drowning him, while the angel is counter opposite, was telling me, your dad's about to die. You need to go ahead and like save him right now. He's not pretending, is what got my dad to live. So, you know what I mean? Like, I responded to what that angel has said to me. And I think about the alchemy behind it years later. And I'm like, okay, well, that was supposed to happen to awaken like this hero energy in me as an
Mhm.
8-year-old. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And
wow.
arguably, my dad had generated a bunch of fucking negative karma from all these different angles, which is like, no duh, this angel or this demon, right? This angel slash demon came through and tried to drown him because he had summoned that himself.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And then I look at like different things. The last piece I'll add here is like I look at like how when you study black magic, it teaches you about demonology. So I was thinking about like when my dad would lose his shit, he'd be like, you're letting Satan in the house. Satan, Satan. Like that was always his word. He never said Lucifer, the devil. He didn't say any of the other forms. It was always Satan. Well, okay, Satan is wrath. And my dad was really violent and he tried to kill people and stuff like that. So like I see the manifestation that I grew up in, which was Satan, even though he was super devout religious to like, his perception of the Christian God, which then made me feel resentful towards the Christian God because I'm like, if God's supposed to help you get past your fucking demons and shit, why the hell is he getting like possessed and to like
Mhm.
want to kill us all and do all these things? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So then I look at that, like my dad was an alcoholic. That's Beelzebub, the demon that makes men kill themselves with their own vices. My grandfather had that connection. And it was only when I was doing like a really advanced, like Akashic transformation that I ended up realizing a contract that one of my ancestors in like the 1600s or something like that had done with the demon Beelzebub to let Beelzebub run through our veins so that my ancestor could get something that he really wanted. So my great 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 grandfather, how many times over gave the family bloodline as an offering to get what he wanted,
Mm.
which then I saw how it destroyed my father and his father and his father. And if it wasn't because I had learned black magic, that shit was coming for me too. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's like
Mhm.
I'd rather know than not know.
That is such a good point, dude. Like, I'd rather know. Like, I'd rather know more truth about this reality, about the reality of humanity and how evil we potentially could be, and all the demons that have personified throughout the ages because of our own, humanity, our own confusion between the darkness and the light, than being hidden. Because being hidden or lied to it's not a great way to live. I just feel like you miss out on so much of quote unquote power or magic.
And like I think about how um look at us, like we don't wear black lipstick and we don't look super goth.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
not
we're
it's not what you think it is. It's almost like never what you think it is. And that's the fun part about shadow work, black magic, like delving into the occult, like it just surprises you. It's interesting to me. And it teaches you so much. The bloodline thing. Oh yeah, I was gonna mention something else about in order to clear black magic, like what is it? You know, as shamans who can clear black magic, like what does it require? What is it? What kind of training or like perception is required of you? Because if you don't understand darkness within yourself, and even the best way to understand darkness is probably looking at the trauma from your ancestral line within the family structure, the people who are closest to you. And sure, we can even go into romantic situations because of it's those situations are the most triggering, intense, and confrontational to our ego and requires us to grow, learn, or continues to suffer. So understanding that inner darkness and the darkness around you, surrounding you is, I feel like it's pivotal. It helped me clear black magic and understand black magic at a higher level because I don't try to avoid it. I don't try to lie to myself when I see something that's undesirable or unhealthy or that is opposing, it's going against what I'm trying to manifest. I always
Mhm.
kind of do my best to confront it, to investigate, to work through it. That's just what's coming
Yeah.
through. What else? What other like comments do you have about that? Like, what does it take for someone to be good at clearing black magic?
You can't rely on light work by itself, and
Mm,
you can't rely on non you can't rely on magic that's pantheological, so that are from pantheon. So for instance, like there are certain curses that gods that are your friends can remove. You know what I
mm,
mean? Then there are curses that you can remove because you understand the blueprint of it. There are
mm-hmm,
curses that you can remove because that curse can't be in your vibration when your client comes to you in the first place. So like the moment your client is actually in a physical space with you, the curse is dissolved, you know?
mm-hmm,
There's so many different ways that you can dissolve a curse. It's just where's your consciousness and what is your access point to be able to manipulate infinity to create that result. And that's
mm-hmm,
why like curses at a super basic level, like and that's what I really think about. It's so funny because when people come through and they're like, "Oh, I got a curse." Yeah, like that's some shit that you probably could have gotten rid of by yourself, to be honest. If you allowed yourself to explore how to remove a curse, because in all reality, most people who try to do curses are doing it from an egotistic base.
mm-hmm,
That egotistic base always has a flaw because it's ego.
mm-hmm,
So like I could easily detach my client from the situation that was filled with ego because in reality, if I'm cursing you based off of envy, then that means there's a part of you that is in resonance with me being able to curse you through the channel that is envy. You know what I mean? So
mm-hmm,
rather you want me to be envious of you, or you know, you are generating something else. I can't even think of another one because they get so complex. But you know, it's always a resonance thing. So if I transcend my ego or you transcend your ego, the curse already breaks because that's an alternate reality you that still has to exist. And yeah, you are still cursing that alternate reality me, but it's not the me that just shifted into a new reality. So
mm-hmm,
like the more lucid you are, even when you think about curses are quantum manipulations. They're not just, you know, summoning spirits that are always going to fuck you up because at our level, we know how to fucking create curses just because of how your psychology is engineered. Like we understand the human experience so much that if we wanted to curse you, it would be something that's so complex that the average energy healer wouldn't be able to break because it's made from a multidimensional standpoint. So unless you can view a bunch of fucking elements at once, you're always going to miss something which will allow the curse to regenerate. And I've seen it happen in clients where like they literally regenerate the curse if you don't deal with it at its like full inception point. And the inception point isn't always the most obvious thing either. Like, sure, it looks like it's fear, but it could be a very specific fear, not just the energy of fear. And okay, we could say, okay, the specific fear is money. Yeah, but there's maybe a very specific event that, and then if you don't have the ability to recognize the complexity of like, it might be something that I can't even trace. I have to like leave the whole entire tracing process on the side and just
Mm-hmm.
see what the fuck happens. You're gonna allow the seed to always be there. That's how you remove curses, I guess. And you can't
Yeah.
be afraid. You can't be like, oh, I'm afraid of demons. Oh my god, I'm gonna try to get rid of him. Oh, I'm developing my faith. That demon's gonna totally 100% touch you. Like that's not even a thing. Like you need to have this level of I wish a motherfucker would. You know what I mean? And then like and then let that energy just speak for itself because darker spirits respond to vibration. That's pretty much what it is. And then you need to be aware that ego, the reason why like light workers that are super powerful still get fucked up is because their ego is still in the equation somehow, and they'll be like, "Oh, yes, I am so one with God that nothing can touch me. I am invincible." Okay, I could use that statement to
Mm-hmm.
like screw you over if you're not actually speaking from a space of God, because
Mm-hmm.
God wouldn't have to justify not harming himself.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that you had to use that statement just already means that you're not in a vibration of God,
Hmm.
totality, invincibility.
Yeah, you're trying to convince yourself of it.
Yeah, why? You just are. You don't need to say anything. You are. Anyone who is confident is not going to go around and brag about themselves. You know what I mean? Like, there's no need
Yeah.
for that. Anyone who is actually embodying the vibration, let's say intelligence, is not going to go around and tell people, I am smart, by the way, in case you
Hmm.
didn't know. I have a master's in here, PhD in that, and da, 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 da. Like, that is so obviously you're just in your shadow, in a way. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
it's
a
a
lot of
lack of
people.
confidence, which is not
Mm-hmm.
powerful anyway. Like in black magic, it would make you dissolve like that identity of, oh, I have all these achievements and certificates and blah 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 blah, like to justify who you're. Nobody gives a fuck about that. Like
Mm-mm.
at the core experience of humanity, your degrees and all this other crap doesn't matter if you can't make a connection with anybody and if you can't make a long lasting echo of change with every interaction that you have with another individual. And you may not like always do it on purpose, but like you start living from that place, which like everything has an intention. Everything I do is going to make an echo in some way, shape, or form. Let me be as clear as possible with what I desire so I can walk through the void without manifesting or creating egoic blocks
Mm-hmm.
to my full experience, my full divine expression, because the experience is only be there based off of your divine expression. And I think that's why I really love black magic because it brings you to a state of wholeness. Like you end up
Mm-hmm.
realizing everything you've ever said to yourself is a lie. And like, cool, you have to still interact with how that lie has created all these different illusions. And now you're okay to like create some. I can't even, as I'm talking about it, like the energy is like taking over me and I can't really, I can't verbalize anymore because intense channeling that's coming through. But it's
That's good.
so powerful, you know what I
Oh,
mean? It's like, why do I need to justify it? I think that's why I get caught up because it's like, why do I need to justify it? It's an experience. I fucking know how to be in samadhi all the time.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there's not, you start to not have this like eagerness or desperation to have to justify until everyone is satisfied. You're just like, I don't need to. You just feel what I'm saying. If you're here, you obviously are seeking some learning, understanding, and awareness in black magic. And whatever you're going to get and whatever you can perceive is what it is.
Yeah, I think that's like, and I've noticed that with myself too, is like that whole concept of you reach this level of pseudo apathy. It's not like you stop giving a shit about other people. It's just you recognize like some people don't give a shit about themselves enough
Yeah.
to be grateful of the manifestation of them interacting with you in the first place. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not putting you in on a pedestal. It's just recognizing we're all divine instruments of the cosmos. So if I manifest myself being with Tony Robbins and I'm not like present for that, then the manifestation is going to slip right by me. And I may feel like I didn't get the most out of the experience. And there's always going to be some level of regret. But like true
Mm-hmm.
creation is like beyond that, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like being able to really catch yourself, being able to check yourself, being able to evaluate, and then transform yourself when you find there's too much resistance in that direction, certain direction. So
Yeah, you
in
stop
your
like
own darkness.
justifying you stop justifying everything because you realize that by justifying everything we just said is the problem, you know?
Yes.
So if it why go through that whole conversation of all of that to explain that when we can just simply just not be in resonance with it?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And then circling back to what you said about, keeping yourself like it's more about also like when you start to elevate your own energy and power and all of that stuff, you start to tap into bigger projects, and then you start to realize as healers, shamans, alchemists, we are always helping people, so we need to also at some point be more selective. My energy is just as precious as yours, and it's just as sacred as yours. So I don't
Mm.
want to waste my time, meaning I don't want to waste your time either. If this is not aligned, let's just call it a day. Seriously, because I've got better things to do, and I know you do as well. And that's kind of
Mhm.
like my perception of late. I'm just like, it's not that I like or dislike you, it's just I don't feel a resonance, and I need to be accountable to myself first and foremost.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I
boundaries.
can't. Yeah, and I can't go after the bigger things if I'm constantly catering to other people's needs and desires, and I'm just giving away my power, my energy, just like before. Then how can I say I have elevated and transcended if I'm not doing anything different?
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, definitely. No, I agree. That's a good conversation. I think this is
Yeah.
like really, this is an honest to God, pure experience, definition, and a testament to what black magic actually is. And we're not saying like get into it if that's not your flavor. If you're not ready for that, you're not ready for that. But
Be
if you're
honest.
like, if you want to be real, if you
Be
really want to be
real.
real,
Hmm.
then yeah, get into black magic. And we teach it in the Antojai school. If you want to know more, just go to antojai.us or send us a message at antojai@antojai.us, and we will respond back to you as quickly as possible. Don't forget to follow on Instagram at Antojai, YouTube, Antojai Quantum Reiki, and I will catch you later. Thank you, Aline, for being here for that like conversation.
Yay. Thank you for having me.